Nobody is born whole. Where's the line between a campy ghost story and harsh reality? What do we think of when we talk about tone? How does style, art, writing, direction work together or even fight each other in creating atmosphere? When I saw that Dororo, the classic yokai manga by Osamu Tezuka, had a brand new anime, I could hardly believe my eyes. Where do you even begin when talking about such an odd piece from Tezuka's body of work? It's by no means the strangest, but it isn't exactly well known, as it's heavily overshadowed by Astro Boy, Phoenix, Kemba, Princess Knight, Buddha, the list goes on. And there's a reason why Dororo doesn't come up in conversation. It's a big topic to cover, as Tezuka's work is always rich with information, and combined with the history of this particular work, its adaptations, it's not going to fit neatly into one video. Here, I'm going to do my best to provide some info on the manga for those who are watching the 2019 anime and want some history, or perhaps are just interested in Tezuka in general. I hope to cover adaptations in a future video, and once the 19 anime is wrapped up. At its core, Dororo is about finding wholeness. Throughout the series, both good and evil characters struggle against their own brokenness and those around them. Even the monsters and ghosts that haunt the war-torn country are too often the result of people trying to just do good and are killed as a result. Even when there is objective evil, it manifests close to the human heart, merely exacerbating trauma, fear, and the need for survival that's already there. I believe that this is a common theme throughout Tezuka's work. For instance, in Astro Boy, where Tobio is tragically killed in a car crash, and his father, Professor Tenma, builds an android to take his place. Unfortunately, that doesn't work out too well. Even in Buddha, we have a young prince who really wants to help people and help free people from their suffering. Tezuka seems less interested in tales of glory and triumph, and more with karmic tales of redemption and tackling the flaws in human nature. Osamu Tezuka began writing Dororo in 1967 in response to the growing popularity of the yokai, or monster ghost genre, as well as adding in some good old samurai revenge plot, placing it firmly in the Sengoku period. It was during the late 60s that Tezuka had to navigate a rapidly changing market, and as such began developing radically diverse works, including several experimental art house films. While Astro Boy had been a huge success, the anime came to an end in '66, after which Tezuka would begin his life work of Phoenix, a sci-fi fantasy spanning from ancient Japan to the far future, addressing concepts of immortality and life in general in the form of an anthology. Japanese artistic expression and social unrest reached a peak in the 60s, which did not translate overseas as well as one would think. For instance, the strict localization of Kemba focused on certain story elements that were a lot more child-friendly, and Princess Knight was rejected due to its gender bending. For reference, a darker, edgier trend would continue as seen in 1001 Nights, 1969, which was a success in Japan but flopped in the States due to its X rating. I suppose that there wasn't much of an audience for hentai back then. As a result of conflicting responses from home and abroad, these years would be decisive in Tezuka's career, and Dororo fits perfectly within this set of circumstances, using a typically cute style, and then shifting into the realism that even Tezuka himself deemed too dark. As a result, the series, while moderately popular, would slide as Tezuka lost interest, went on a hiatus, and eventually brought the series to a premature end. The title, Dororo, is a childish mispronunciation of Dorobo, meaning thief, and is the ostensible main character. the concept originating as a story about a boy thief during the Sengoku period, but this plot muddles with that of another protagonist, Hyakkimaru and his karmic quest to slay the 48 demons who stole his organs when he was an infant. As the manga got even darker in tone, it showed the struggle of peasants rebelling against the samurai class and the atrocities of war. The Sengoku period was a time rife with violence, as a once powerful and stable country fell into anarchic fascism and feudalism. The emperor was a mere figurehead, and lord vassals were in perpetual war with each other. This period would be brought to an end by terrifying figures like Oda Nobunaga. It is this strife that shaped both of our protagonists, even before their births. The manga opens when feudal lord Daigo Kagemitsu visits the Hall of Hell, in which there are 48 statues of demons. He makes a bargain that in exchange for dominion over the whole country, the demons may each take a body part of his unborn son. When Kagemitsu returns home and sees that his son lacks arms, legs, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and even skin, he knows that it has worked. Despite his wife's protests, Kagemitsu forces her to abandon him, left to drift on a river in a wooden basin. The mother prays that her son might survive and grow strong. Later, the infant is found by a skilled doctor, Jukai. It quickly becomes apparent that despite the infant's condition, he has a strong will to survive, and is able to psychically touch the heart of the doctor. Jukai Sensei devotes himself crafting highly sophisticated prosthetics so that the boy might lead a normal life. Naturally, that is impossible as he is haunted by demons and ghouls of all kinds. As a parting gift, Jukai gives his adopted son a sword which he crafts into his arms, as well as the name Hyakkimaru, meaning 100 demons. Though he was dismembered and abandoned at birth, Hyakkimaru does in fact have a way to survive in this cruel world. He begins travels as a demon slayer, seeking to slay each of the 48 demons who stole his body, and upon slaying each, the stolen organ is restored. Hyakkimaru is less on a journey to cleanse evil, and more to restore his own humanity. At the beginning of his journey, while Hyakkimaru has the abilities of a normal person thanks to his, ESP, he is still far from being capable, but luckily meets a blind monk who leads him to a village of war survivors, children, burn victims, amputees, the sick and disabled. The monk tells Hyakkimaru that surely, if he has grown as strong as he is, then he can survive under his own strength. At this village, he falls in love with a woman caring for the children named Mio, who breathed humanity into Hyakkimaru's heart. And when she was ruthlessly killed by samurai, his heart died with her, leaving him even more broken. While hunting a spirit, Hyakkimaru happens upon the young thief Dororo, self-proclaimed greatest thief under heaven, as he's being drowned by thugs. The spirit floating down the river kills the thugs, including some Indiana Jones-style face-melting, but Hyakkimaru dispatches it quickly. Dororo begins to follow Hyakkimaru despite his rejection, claiming that he wants to steal his sword. The plot goes back and forth between Hyakkimaru and Dororo, detailing his past, for instance his parents, Hibukuro and Ojiya, feared bandits who are at constant odds with samurai who destroyed their peaceful way of life. The family is eventually captured by samurai, and though they escape, Hibukuro is betrayed by his lieutenant Itachi, shot with arrows, crippling his legs so that he can barely walk. The family scrapes by until Hibukuro picks a fight with a traveling noble's entourage and is killed. Although Ojiya and Dororo escape, it isn't long before she too dies, trying to keep her son warm in the middle of a blizzard. Dororo isn't really a comic relief, as the death of his family weighs heavily upon his heart. He even blames himself for the death of his mother. Hyakkimaru finally comes face to face with his family during the chapel entitled Banon, in which a town had been torn in two by war. A wall ran through the center of the town, trapping people on either side. But as time went on, death surrounded the wall, creating a no man's land. And all that was left was a single section, now used as an execution ground. Within this chapter, Tezuka makes clear references to the Korean Civil War, as family members who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time became separated for years, not knowing if their children or parents were alive. In town, Hyakkimaru finds nothing but hostility, and after taking out a band of thugs, meets Tahumaru, second son of Daigo Kagemitsu and Hyakkimaru's younger brother. Tahumaru had ordered the thugs to attack Hyakkimaru, and after being impressed by his swordsmanship, brings him home where Daigo tries to convince Hyakkimaru to join his army, but he refuses. That night, Hyakkimaru meets his mother. Try as she might to beg for forgiveness, Hyakkimaru rejects her and runs away in despair. In his mind, he has no parents, for if he did, then he would have to accept the fact that he was left to die by his own mother. After running away from the estate, Hyakkimaru goes to find Dororo, who has once again been caught up in trouble and is about to be executed. Tahumaru, already angry at Hyakkimaru's insolence, goes to fight him. Horrified by the duel, Daigo rushes to stop his sons from killing each other, as he is the only one who knows their real relationship. Unfortunately, Daigo is not in time to stop his sons, and Hyakkimaru kills his younger brother. During the duel, the fox demon who lives at Banon speaks into Hyakkimaru's heart, taunting him with the reveal that he is the son of Daigo Kagemitsu and is about to kill his own brother. This is a particularly interesting conclusion to the fight, as the paneling absolutely goes to hell, jumbling up and turning sideways. This isn't an ordinary fight. Tahumaru isn't a demon, he isn't possessed, he isn't a faceless thug. Hyakkimaru has such a difficult time with this fight. Later, it even affects his relationship with Dororo, as he fears losing the only friend that he really has. The chapter concludes with Hyakkimaru slaying the fox demon and the collapse of Banon, which reunites long-lost families, while Kagemitsu vows to kill Hyakkimaru, his only living son. The next couple of chapters deal with a hunt for Dororo's father's treasure, which ends up being a wild goose chase, and some minor demons which explore further themes of family and especially children, such as the haunted ruins of a burned-down orphanage, or a spirit that attempts to sacrifice Dororo to a demon, but cannot find the will to do so after Dororo begins calling her Mama. Even the dead and haunted feel the pain of a missing part. Finally, they come to Kagemitsu's fort. The pair split up, Hyakkimaru going to find his father, leaving Dororo angry about being abandoned by the man he considered a brother. Dororo is conscripted by Kagemitsu's builders as they try to stage a rebellion. While many of them are killed trying to storm the fort, others had built a tunnel which Dororo uses to gain entry into the fort. Once arriving, he is immediately captured, as he is practically every chapter. On Hyakkimaru's end of things, Kagemitsu welcomes his son as a guest. His mother tries again to beg for forgiveness and is denied. Kagemitsu tests Hyakkimaru's loyalty, asking him to execute Dororo, although Hyakkimaru makes as though he's going to execute the kid, he instead throws his sword at a lurking demon who has possessed Kagemitsu. The fight ends quickly and somewhat anticlimactically, and the peasants take the fort. Kagemitsu curses his son, but his wife leads him away, telling him that they have no right to resent him. I find it particularly odd that despite the amount of time that we see Kagemitsu and how he's built up as this big bad, he lives. He doesn't fight his son. He just walks away. It's this really sad moment that this huge future that he's dreamed of and strived for. He's sacrificed his own humanity and the humanity of his son. It all just vanishes. Hyakkimaru decides that it's time to part ways with Dororo. As a parting gift, he gives Dororo one of his swords, telling him to use the skills as a thief to fight alongside the weak as his father did. Hyakkimaru also reveals that he learned Dororo's secret, that he was actually born female. While he wishes for Dororo to defend the poor, that he also wants Dororo to grow up to be a proper young lady. Dororo is not taking any of that. Hyakkimaru promises that they will meet again when his body is whole. This is where it ends, with Dororo calling out to Hyakkimaru as he walks away, rather like the lone stranger who walks off into the sunset. Oh, what's that one movie? I forget. You know, calling out the name. We do, however, get an epilogue, simply telling us that 50 years later, the Hall of Hell and its 48 statues are burned to the ground by the flames of war. This is rather funny, as in Hyakkimaru's, 17 years, he had managed to kill, I believe, 21 demons, that it took him another 50 years to finish them off. Time after time, it is not the life or death battles against monsters that provides the main source of drama, but rather Tezuka's mastery of storytelling. Sure, there's a lot of outdated language and references. A lot of the jokes and fourth wall breaking are kind of disconcerting to a modern audience and fall flat, but he's still able to make a reader involved with his characters, in part because of this. We get to see Dororo and Hyakkimaru butt heads and goof around. We know that beneath the fun of adventure, there's real heartbreak in these characters, and this is how they go about their daily lives. Even side characters are given such clear motivation and human emotion. It's startling to read a manga with such cute characters and goofy monsters, and all of a sudden to meet a character who's haunted by his memories of war, being forced to execute innocent men, and carries that for the rest of his life. While it is tragic that the story has no real end, I'm not sure that it's a story that could easily be wrapped up. What happens when Hyakkimaru defeats all of his demons? He has devoted his entire life to a single task, and has no friends or family after leaving Dororo. Every time he slays a demon, growing back part of his body is extremely painful and leaves him disoriented. When he grows back his first eye, he can barely stand from the dizziness and blinding light. The fights are also never clean-cut. Although Hyakkimaru rids the worlds of demons, there's a cost too, disrupting ways of life. Perhaps killing a long-lost brother, or putting an entire village in jeopardy. As such, he never receives gratitude or rest. He's not a hero in the eyes of these people. To talk about the art a little bit, Dororo makes use of these beautifully detailed environments and historical accuracy, which draws us into a dark, crueler world in which demons and evil spirits roam the country. War has ravaged the people, and there's little hope nor solace in the Buddha. The destruction across Japan is reflected in Hyakkimaru's cursed and dismembered body. What little remains, however, is strong enough to survive, and as Hyakkimaru reclaims his lost body, he cleanses demons from the world and confronts the evil of men. Standing in sharp contrast with the Demon Slayer is Tezuka's cuteness in Dororo, a childish name for a childish character that's always up to some mischief. While the world's greatest thief is silly and a comic relief, he doesn't fall flat as a character. He isn't just there to make jokes. He doesn't comment on power level. He's not a mascot. Dororo is the lens through which we experience the world. He has this shining, childish innocence that balances out Hyakkimaru, and allows them both to survive the horror around them. Dororo fully knows that to survive, you have to be callous and selfish. But when it comes down to it, he goes out of his way to help those in need, even when it means going against people far stronger than him. Tezuka contrasts his dual protagonists in their approach to the world. Hyakkimaru is set on this path of vengeance with tunnel vision. He starts the series literally blind. While Dororo takes a much more compassionate worldview. He's always quick to make friends, even with Hyakkimaru, who honestly wanted nothing to do with this brat. Dororo has hope in people and often tells people that they don't need to be alone, even when tragedy strikes. Everyone has the capability to survive. If he can do it, though at the brink of death so often, anyone can. I do find it interesting that Dororo has the pure heart of a shonen protagonist, believing in justice and openly weeping over the people that Hyakkimaru kills. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru is a cynical outsider. Yet, Dororo lacks the strength to fight injustice and gets tied up and beaten in every chapter. It's Hyakkimaru, the callous one, that shows up in the nick of time and rescues Dororo, even though he didn't want anything to do with him in the first place. The reason that Dororo started following Hyakkimaru in the first place was because he's strong, and to steal his swords, believing that if you have a sword, you don't have anything to fear. Meanwhile, the last thing that Hyakkimaru wants is some brat kid getting in his way or any companionship. His heart is absolutely torn to shreds after Mio's death, after all. Perhaps by the end of the series, Hyakkimaru giving Dororo his sword is a bestowal of his own strength, while Dororo has rekindled Hyakkimaru's cold heart. Hyakkimaru insists that Dororo must confront the world as it is and grow up. So in terms of adaptations, there's a few. There was an anime shortly after Dororo had finished its manga run. It's in black and white and didn't really do very well. It changed some things around with the plot, but due to being canceled, never had a proper ending. There's also a PS2 video game that did get an actual ending, as well as a movie, which exists. It's live action. It looks pretty goofy. And then, of course, there's the 2019 anime that is coming out as I record this. I'm really curious to see what they do. One concern is that they changed the number of demons from 48 to 12, which is concerning because there's 12 episodes in a season of anime. So what this tells me is that this might just be one season. Hopefully they do a good job with the ending, as this is something that, like I said, doesn't have an ending, and who knows what Tezuka would have wanted in the first place. I don't believe that there's any notes or that he actually had a plan. But yeah, we'll see. Future holds some interesting things.